Well, here's a question. Should a 5-year-old be suspended from school? Nebraska lawmakers are debating it right now.
A new bill aims to overturn a current law that prevents pre-K through second grade students from being suspended or expelled. First Alert 6's Philip Katafmo joins us live in the studio. Philip, why change this law now?
Well, Brian and Aaron, if you have a young child going to school, this bill could impact your family. The Education Committee is meeting right now to talk about LB 1053, introduced at the request of Governor Jim Pillen. For 2 years, pre-K through second grade students have been protected from suspensions. This year, that could change.
I don't believe this law is working. Suspension should never be the first option. But what happens when a student behaves in a violent manner and students or staff get hurt? This causes harm to the learning environment for the other students in the class, and even more importantly, it can become a safety concern.
Current law allows exceptions for suspensions if a young student brings a weapon to school. Supporters of LB 1053 say that isn't enough.
I've heard stories from teachers and administrators about biting, hitting, throwing desks and chairs, stabbing with pencils, and even kicking the stomach of a pregnant teacher. How can children learn in that environment?
Opponents argue suspending these students doesn't correctly address behavioral issues. Experts worry it could teach them that acting out results in exclusion.
It's kind of a cyclical effect, and the mental health aspect can get quite severe. If they think that this is the only way that they can get noticed is through these behaviors, then they're going to keep showing them, sometimes increase the severity of these actions, which is the exact opposite of what we want.
A lack of resources at schools are also a concern. Some districts offer talk therapy or counselors, but most do not. Voices for Children in Nebraska would like to see more resources instead of punishment. They also worry about the impact this bill could have on minority students.
Again, the data shows that a lot of the children that are being suspended are predominantly Black boys, and the data follows that into the juvenile justice system. So it's really important that we kind of stop this exclusionary practice early in order to make sure that all children have a chance to thrive and succeed.
The current law was proposed by Senator Terrell McKinney in 2023. At that time, he believed it would be key in Omaha, reducing the number of kids who end up in the criminal justice system. Now, we will be monitoring LB 1053 and other bills of interest as they go through the Unicam. You can find additional coverage on our First Alert 6 app or on our website. Live in the studio, I'm Philip Katafamo, First Alert 6.